Guys, we are back with our big 300th episode, show, whatever you want to call it, man. We just got done reviewing our 1,000th review. Time to move on to number 2,000. And to get to number 2,000, we got to start with the first one. And we are going to be doing a film that probably impacted our lives, not just our lives, lives of millions and millions of people across the world. We're talking about the original Star Wars movie, and it's now known as A New Hope. And to help review it, to help discuss it, to help talk about it, I got my good friend Chris here. And Chris, I thought I was a Star Wars fan. You you beat me by megatons, brother.
Well, honestly, it didn't take any effort. It was I was exposed to it from day one.
Mm-hmm.
I've got an older brother who lived in L.A. When all of this was happening.
Right.
And he was a geek and a nerd, and he got me excited about it before it ever came out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I come by it honestly, and it just, I mean, I was 8 years old when it came out, and it shaped my life.
So you were 8 years old
Mm-hmm.
when it came out. Were you living in Southern California at that time?
I was living in Northern California, the San Francisco Bay Area.
Okay.
My brother went to UCLA and was in Southern California, but he was my idol, so anything he liked, I liked, and he was really, really high on this new George Lucas film.
Yeah.
And even at 8 years old, I picked up on that, and I can remember Christmas of '76 even, geeking out over his... the stories he would tell me, because he would come and visit on holidays, and he'd tell me stories that friends of his who worked in Hollywood would tell him about movies that were coming out, and I geeked out over it because I love science fiction.
Yeah.
Even at 8 years old. So, I mean, it didn't hit me all at once. I mean, it was a real gradual thing.
Of course.
And it started early.
So talk about your first experience watching Star Wars. Was it in the theaters?
Yes, it was. Opening night, San Francisco, 1977. I believe it was April of '77. My brother, like I said, he went to UCLA, and he had a job working at a Ticketron outlet in Southern California, and he got advance tickets to opening night, Star Wars in San Francisco at the Coronet Theater. Old school theater, had the neon lights, the big facade, the ticket booth.
Oh, that's so cool.
It really was. It was cool. And he and his girlfriend came and picked me up, and we went up to San Francisco, and there was a line out the front of the theater and around the block to get in. They had the spotlights on the little rotating things, and I mean, it was a big deal. And we got to pass by the line because we had pre-purchased tickets, and we still got like the last three seats in the theater. We sat in the very front row, down in front, and I was as soon as the music started, the John Williams theme started, and I was done.
So talk about that very, very first scene when you see Princess Leia's ship driving by in space, and then you see the big Star Destroyer chasing after it. You're in the front row. What are you thinking, man?
That was absolutely mind-blowing. I mean, I'm 8 years old. I'm already a science fiction fan, but of course my experience with sci-fi is the campy stuff that had been put out on film prior to this, and books. And of course my reading skills were such that I kind of stuck with the young adult, which is really campy, So, I mean, I knew I loved science fiction, but my experience hadn't been that deep. I was blown away. The quality of the special effects, that's the thing. Industrial Light and Magic. I mean, the guy had to create his own special effects company just to do what he needed to do for this one film.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of dedication, it just, now as an adult, it's just mind-blowing. As a kid, it's like, wow. And that's about as far as it went. But I was overwhelmed. The quality was so much beyond what I had seen before that it was almost overwhelming.
Let's talk about the movie itself. Obviously, millions and millions and millions of people have seen this movie. Millions of people are, obsessed with this movie. I want to talk to the people right now who are listening who aren't into Star Wars
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe they haven't seen it. Maybe they're like, why is this movie such a big deal?
Right.
What are some of the key elements of this film that you want people to know about?
Okay, first of all, George Lucas as a storyteller he's phenomenal. People will compare the Star Wars story, and it's a huge story. It's not just a movie. It spans generations.
Mm-hmm.
The story itself is fantastic. People will say things like all he's done is he's rehashed Kurosawa and the Seven Samurai, and he's taken bits from spaghetti westerns in Italy and the serials, the early Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon serials, and he's combined them to make this big flashbang, and that is not right. The total is so much more than a sum of its parts. Mm-hmm. Episode 4, A New Hope, is not a perfect movie. It's not even a great movie. It's slow. It bogs down in places. The dialogue is just... George Lucas, he writes great expositional dialogue. He writes great informative dialogue. Interpersonal dialogue, you'd think he'd never had just a relaxed personal conversation.
Yeah.
But I mean, he knows that, and he doesn't care because he had a story to tell. Mm-hmm. So, I don't mean to tell people that it's the greatest movie that's ever been made, because it isn't. It's my favorite, which is different.
Yeah.
Because the story it tells, it's got a whole galaxy to draw from, and it focuses on one family line. It really is a science fiction soap opera, which is really what he had in mind when he first came up with it. He wanted it to be that type of drama with action interspersed. And I think in that regard, he hit the nail on the head. The story he tells is engaging. Mm-hmm. The characters he presents are relatable. They're identifiable. And they're people that you actually, for whatever reason, and I've talked to other people about this, you actually care about them.
Yeah.
With not a whole lot of backstory. The way that he presents them is such that the characters in this film you care about before you even know why you should. And I don't know how much the 8-year-old in me is coming out in that, but honestly, that's the way because I've seen this movie so many times I've lost count. And honestly, an actual review of this movie should be done in 3 parts, because there's the 1977 release, there's the episode 4 as a part of the 6 movie series, and then there's the episode 4 as it relates to 2017 movies. So you can take 3 separate looks at the same movie and get 3 separate interpretations of it. But bottom line is, it's a good story. It tells the chapter of an overall tale that you really want to know.
Yeah.
It's good storytelling.
Favorite parts? What are some of the favorite parts of the movie that you like? Obviously, you like the whole thing, but if you had to shoehorn a few things.
Sure. In episode 4, A New Hope, you are, of course, introduced to 4 or 5 of the primary 6 movie prime characters. Mm-hmm. The Luke Skywalker, the Princess Leia, the Han Solo. So the introductions of each character is done in such a way that it really does make you care about them. They aren't introduced as a throwaway and then through attrition left to be the individual that you care about. Each person fills a role. The cantina scene when we meet Han Solo is just that sticks in my mind. That scene with Han Solo and Chewbacca and Obi-Wan and Luke sitting at the table in the cantina defines Han Solo as a character. It was beautifully done. Minimalist, but there is absolutely no hesitation when you think of Han Solo. You know who he is based on that introductory scene. That's got to be my overall favorite.
Yeah.
Of course, Darth Vader entering the blockade runner in the very beginning of the film is just iconic. that's a favorite just because it has to be.
So we hit on some of the favorites. What are some of the things that didn't fare so well to you?
Sure. The storytelling, it bogs down. If you break the movie into 3 acts, the first act is pretty slow. From the opening crawl, you get a little burst of action, and then it's pretty slow. The progression, by necessity,
of course,
is such that you kind of hunker down a little bit. The pace slows a bit. The whole Tatooine thing up until the cantina at the end of the first act is pretty plain and slow paced, but it needs to be because it's setting the groundwork for everything that comes afterwards. The end, Act 3, to me personally, even as a kid, I thought to myself, that seems pretty cut and dried. It seemed a little too perfect. They're fighting for their lives, and people died, but to have the kid you followed all through the movie be the one to fire the
winning shot,
right? The fatal shot, that bothered me just a little bit, but at the same time, that's Hollywood.
Yeah.
If you want real life, go watch Your Neighbor. Honestly.
You mentioned this a little bit in the beginning of the review. John Williams' score. To me, I think it is one of the most important keys to Star Wars success, not with just film, but with all the films that have come. Where do you put John Williams' score in the success rate of why this movie was so successful?
It's unbelievably vital. The John Williams score is just iconic. I don't care if you're a Star Wars fan or not. The opening bars of the theme to Star Wars resonate with people. Even if they don't know it's Star Wars, quote unquote, they recognize it.
Yeah.
Same thing goes for the Imperial March.
Yes.
I can't tell you how many people I have heard, total strangers, their cell phone will ring, and it's the Imperial March as their ringtone.
Yeah.
John Williams has his finger on the pulse as far as emoting through music. He really, really does. A lot of movies today will draw from popular culture, and they will take songs that have already garnered an audience and use them to bring about an already established emotion during a certain scene of a movie. And I think that to me, I'm a little bit of a purist. That's cheating. That's cheating. There's nothing like composing music that has never been heard before to bring about a feeling within the viewer or the listener that's very specific. John Williams saw a rough cut of this movie and composed music to bring about the mood and the feeling that you were supposed to have during each scene. That is brilliance.
Yeah.
It really is. He is such an unsung hero of the whole saga. Without him and the soundtrack, I mean, I had the soundtrack on vinyl that I wore out. Even incidental music, the crappy song they played in the cantina.
Yeah.
All of that, it just, that is what really sets the tone and the mood. The music in the film tells you how you're supposed to feel before you even see the scene that you're feeling.
That's a very, very good point. Very good point. As we close out this review, Chris, and I want to hit on those people who aren't Star Wars fans. For the people who haven't seen it, or maybe they've seen it once or twice or whatever, why should people see Star Wars: A New Hope?
Star Wars: A New Hope it's a good, fun movie. It's like reading chapter 4 of a 6-chapter book, which sounds bad, but it's not. You get enough backstory along the way without stopping or slowing things down that you understand exactly what's going on. You can be invested in what's going on. You can look forward to what's coming next, and yet what happens before is still relevant. It's a good story. The acting, despite the terrible dialogue, the acting is really good. He did a great job by grabbing some really young actors and actresses to bring these characters to life. It's an enjoyable story. The special effects are just incredible. They even stand up today. They really do.
They do. I agree. I agree.
And anybody who even remotely cares about science fiction should see it simply because it has influenced everything that has come since. Everything. Whether it be the style of special effects, the use of music to set tone, the attitudes towards non-humanoids. I mean, it really has, it has affected and guided science fiction from that point forward.
And to kind of piggyback off that idea, Star Wars, I don't want to say invented, but it popularized the blockbuster. Before Star Wars, there was no summer blockbuster,
Star Wars created the concept of the blockbuster. There were movies that had made millions of dollars before that, but not in such a juggernaut fashion.
Yeah.
And I mean, it really did set the stage for the year. Every year has a movie or two that it's known for. And I mean, Star Wars really set the stage for that.
Yeah. I mean, your Avengers, your comic book movies,
exactly,
your Transformers movies, you can thank Star Wars for that. Now,
absolutely.
Now, Chris said that he's not going to tell you that it's the greatest movie of all time.
Nope.
But I will. I will say that to you. Chris, thank you so much for being on the show, man.
Oh,
you
bet.
were insightful, and you brought some knowledge to Star Wars that I didn't even know, man. So thank you for doing that.
You're very welcome. I'm glad to see my geekness paid off.
That's Chris. I'm Chris. We got some more reviews coming at you next. We'll be doing the movie Some Like It Hot. It's coming up next on KWOC.